just us on the screen.
Hello.
Who's this gentleman here?
I didn't realize we were jumping in.
Yeah, that's how we do. And I realized I was like, you need to be on when the stream starts at this point. So instead of bringing you in later. So yeah.
Right,
hey, Brandon, how are you?
I am amazing, Illuminteers. How are you?
We're doing great. How was Disney? We haven't seen you since you went to Disneyland.
Disney was so fun. It was especially fun because you guys were there for part of it. Just being, the whole weekend, getting to spend some time with friends. It's like it's always my highlight for those weekends, if I'm being honest. Like, obviously, like the actual parks were super fun, but and I'm sure they would have been fun with just by myself. But like, these are the times we all get to catch up. Like we don't get to see each other outside of the interwebs. A lot of us don't talk to each other outside of phone calls or Discord messages or whatever. And so it's always like extra special for us to be like physically in the same place where we can share a meal or, play a couple games of Lorcana and just sort of hang out with each other.
Yeah, it's amazing to get to see people in 3D. And we never spent so much time with you. I think we had like 4 dinners together or something over the course of the whole weekend, and shared a lot of Ubers. You tolerated a small human following you around constantly.
She's precious.
Yeah. And Elena.
Yes, and Elena.
I am a small human.
No comment.
Especially in the booth next to all of you.
The number of times that Brandon and Rebecca had to sit there and watch us try to install a car seat into an Uber in like 30 seconds.
I was just trying to be like helpful. Like I didn't want to be the person that just sat there and literally like watched you do everything. It's like I want to help you, but I know zero about taking care of a child or car seats.
You did a great job at pushing a stroller, like
or anything.
You pushed a stroller all over Disneyland Hotel.
So I was just like, I'll grab a bag, and that'll be one less thing that they have to carry.
Yeah, babies do not travel light. Especially when you're going to like a DLC for like 12 straight hours. I'm like, I need toys. I need nap time stuff. I need snacks. I need all the things. So
yeah, honestly, like shout out to all the spouses out there that like let their significant other go to these events, especially if you have kids. Because watching Aaron do this for not the first time. This has not been the first time I've watched you have to carry around a child for an entire event. It does not look easy.
It is definitely a thing. Luckily, that was not our first rodeo, and we had like a little bit of a home base at the event, which was really, really nice. So I didn't have to like, constantly watch my stuff. I could kind of leave it because we had it in a place where it was going to be safe. So anyway.
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah.
Oh yes. Lots of auntie and uncles for Elena.
Yeah,
she's
definitely.
she's a very lucky girl. So anyway,
how are you? It's fun. Just to echo what Brandon said before we talk about the show this week is the thing about challenge season. One of the reasons I love to call it a season is because throughout that year, because everything's kind of back to back, they do feel kind of like family reunions, and you see a lot of the same people over and over, or even seeing people who only maybe get to come to 1 or 2 challenges, but that from online, and so you get to see them, in person. It's
we got to see Mushu in person,
which
was like
cool.
not expecting him to be there.
No, well, like I think I want to say I knew he was going to be there. Like, I saw it on Twitter. I remember I saw it on Twitter, and I was like super excited because I remember what it was like meeting Pavel at Gen Con, because it's just like they're one of those people again that we interact with all the time online, and especially Mushu. Like anybody that has been around Lorcana for an extended period of time, like knows back in the day Moosh Report is still like super important as a news outlet, but especially early on, like he was always on top of card reveals, and he'd have to stay up till like 2 or 3 in the morning on his time just to wait for the card reveals to come around for the first set. He'd be like one of the first people with videos out, and he just has like pulled together basically anything and everything that's like ever happened for Lorcana on Mushu Report, and he's such an important person and has done so much work for the community. And so, but he's one of those people that you just I never expect that I'm going to meet him in person because he lives across the world. And so it's just like, when I found out he was coming, I was so excited. And then to be able to actually like say, hey, shake his hand, give him a hug, take a picture. It was it's one of the, I don't know, like meeting those people specifically is super special.
And he does so much that I think so many people are surprised that it's just him. Like that Mushu report isn't some like giant entity. It's like him.
Yeah.
And so that's really, really great. Yeah. So
yeah.
Speaking of can I just say, sorry, I know we have to get into the show, but speaking of Pavel, I was, I'm in the middle of my organization's giant event is in 3 weeks. So I'm not going to be able to be on the show all night tonight, but cause I have to get back to work, but I'm working on putting together the program, and we list out our donors from the prior year in our program. I'm getting somewhere with this, guys. And I knew that Pavel had given our organization, my organization that I work for, some donations this past summer when he was distributing some of the funds, but he donated over $5,000 to my organization.
Oh my gosh.
Currently, like, this community is listed in my gala program because of the support that y'all gave his entity, that he then turned around and supported my organization that helps foster youth here in Austin. And so I just saw his name today on my list of like major donors. And I just was like, that's so amazing that our community was able to like trickle down and make, you know, a huge impact. Like that serves multiple kids here in Austin and gives them a voice in the foster care system here in Austin because of the support of the Lorcana community. So anyway, that just like came up today that I was like, I need to like sing Pavel's praises on like, and thank, for contributing that way. So sorry. Okay. Now you can get to the show.
Oh, no. It's good stuff to highlight. It's good stuff to highlight. So I guess, let's go back and introduction to everybody. This is, it's Monday night. Thanks for tuning in to our Monday night live stream.
We haven't said that yet.
I know.
Welcome to
It's our weekly show where we cover all things Lorcana, particularly the news and information from last week, with usually some awesome guests.
Yeah.
If you're here live, feel free to interact with us in the chat, ask any questions of us or our guests. We'll try to get to them. And and if it's your first time here, welcome. We have a fun show planned this week. A couple other things to announce, but we got two guests coming on. First, two Worlds qualifiers. First, in a little bit, we'll be talking to s4iler, who qualified for Worlds with his, his signature colors, sapphire, ruby. So we'll talk all about that. And then later on, we'll bring on Mo Shamblin. And then in the middle, we'll talk a little bit about what happened this week. And with that, I shouldn't be doing all the talking because I do want to say we've been talking to Brandon here this last week, and Brandon, what's the news?
Well, so Liam has kindly asked me to, I'm just gonna say it, join as a basically permanent co-host. So I'm very excited. That's sort of why I'm here. I'll be honest, a lot of times they invite me on here, I show up and I'm like, why am I here? You have guests that are way more important that you could ask on here, but they wanted an extra co-host, and obviously some of you may have watched This Week in Ink, something that me and Jonty from the Inkwell, a former Lorcana content creator, made. And I was more than happy to sort of take this up with the Illuminateers, since This Week in Ink obviously is not a thing anymore. So very excited. You guys hopefully will also be kind of excited to see me every week. If not, then I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you.
I'm sorry. I'm here. Well, we're excited to see you every week and have an excuse to get to talk to you every single Monday night now. So.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very exciting. I miss doing it 100%.
Well, and it was a shame, not having people got used to having your voice and hearing your opinion on things. And it was a bit of a gap. When you stopped coming every week. So I think this will fill a bit of a hole that's been there. So before we bring in s4iler, I do want to ask, just generally, we rambled on a bit. How was your week in Lorcana?
How was my week in Lorcana?
Yeah,
it was pretty good. I did a set championship this weekend. I think it was an odd number. I don't remember if it was 15 or 13 people. It was less than 16 though. It was at my local store. I brought Amethyst Steel because my LGS or my locals usually lean pretty aggressive with the decks that they build, and some of the top players there also play decks like Steel Song. So I wanted something that could have game into that. I made it into the top 4. Was taken out by my good friend Casey playing his Steel Song deck. A 1 to 2 in the top 4, but was obviously secured that Scar promo, so I was excited for that. And I have another one next week at basically the sister store for that one. So I don't know if I'm going to bring Amethyst Steel again or if I'm going to try something different. There's definitely some changes to the deck if I do bring it. So kind of excited about that. But what about you guys? Did y'all do any set champs stuff this weekend?
I swung by a set champs this weekend.
Liam's been how I was on mom duty last weekend while we were at Continentals. Liam was on dad duty this weekend while I've been prepping for my gala.
That's fair.
So yeah, had to not do set champs this weekend because we got to go to Anaheim last weekend, and that was kind of be the trade-off.
That's where I got to play.
So but hopefully we do have some set champs in town next weekend that you're going to be playing.
We might. It's the big one next weekend is a really, I don't want to say spiky, but huge players come out. It's usually like 50 some odd people, so it's a tournament. So I may go play in that. I did go watch. I like to support our LGSs, so I took about an hour and a half to go swing down to Space Goblin Games and Collectibles. Shout out to our local community here in South Austin to watch Aaron and some other folks play. So it was good. It was good, but I have aspirations to play next week.
Oh, and then we played this weekend the Steve Warner, Ryan Miller, Princess Bride board game that Ravensburger made like 5 or 6 years ago. So we actually got to play that like at night this weekend, which was a lot of fun. So if you're looking for another Steve and Ryan collab and you like Princess Bride, highly recommend this co-op game that we checked out this weekend. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. But anyway, it was so kind of low key for us, I think, just following the news, and we'll talk, I think, a bit more about the goings on and what we've all been following this week in the middle. But yeah, I don't know. I'm itching to play. And I may take in the deck list of somebody we're going to talk to later today. And on that note, should we bring in our first guest, Brendan?
I think we should. I'm happy to talk to this next guest.
All right. Do you want to introduce him?
Sure. So if any of you are familiar with the popular Disney Lorcana team Labyrinth, this is s4iler from Labyrinth, a Worlds qualifier, top 8 of North American Championship player.
Yeah. All right. Let's bring him in. s4iler.
Hey.
Hello, guys. So happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
It's always a treat. s4iler, before we get into it, I have to say 2 things. One is, I don't know why I can't get your name right on the thumbnail. I will get it next time, so I apologize.
It's pretty obvious why.
Why is that?
Well, like s4iler as like a crewmate, something like that. Mine is just a little bit like off. Like, why is that a boat? Why aren't you like a real s4iler?
I mean, I don't want to say you spelled it wrong, but
it's also a word, right? Like,
that's true.
They're both words.
Yeah,
that's true.
And then the other thing is, Steven, our Steven Gettle, our official stats keeper, was sending me a note today, and he's like, telling me all the guest news, and they're like, this is s4iler's second appearance, is what he said. And I was like, that doesn't seem right, because you're here like every week in the chat, I feel like. So it always feels like you're here, even if you're not on camera. So I just appreciate you. So.
I mean, that's true, right? Like you put my comments on the thing, so it's like I'm there
every time. It's you or somebody you've got at the computer, But no, congrats on qualifying for Worlds. Amazing performance
Thank you so much.
Last weekend. I asked you this before, but I'm going to ask you here on camera. How does it feel to qualify for Worlds?
Such a big relief. My shoulders are just so much lighter. I have been working so hard for this. And I was doing this other interview earlier today, and I was like going through all that I accomplished within this first year of Lorcana. And I was like, I've played like thousands of games in Pixelborn. Like I think at some point we had the data, and it was like 3,000 games. Wow. And I've done like hundreds of hours of coaching, like hundreds, like, and those guides, I've written pages, yes. So many pages about this game, and then within the last few months, it was more of a secretive private. It wasn't as shared, as I used to do. I like to share a lot about what I do, but there it was more like with my team, with my testing group and stuff like that, but also like thinking about this almost every minute of my last 2 months. Like I remember I have this souvenir of being like with a family at Christmas time and thinking about, is Chicha on 2, Quill on 3, Elizabeth better than Paula on 3? And thinking about this all the time, and you get there and you play your matches and it feels natural, and I didn't feel stress when I was playing. But then you go draw, and then you go draw, and then you go one win, no second game concluded, and then suddenly you're on 9 points, and you're like, okay, all this preparation for splitting all day again. And then you go round 4 after a magnificent lunch, by the way. And then you start winning, and it feels like you're in the zone, and then by the end of the day you've done it, and it feels incredible. It being like rewarded for the hard work, and of course I didn't make mistakes, like I played well, but sometimes you don't get there even if you do, right? And yeah, like by the end of the day, I remember my top 16 opponent coming down to me and he said, "You're gonna crush me tomorrow." And I was like, I didn't tell him, but I was like, yeah, I have like zero doubt. And I woke up at like 4:05. I woke up at 4:05 on the Saturday morning, and I never doubted. I was like in the zone. I was there for the Worlds qualifier, and after it happened, it almost like the event was over for me. Like nothing else mattered. And yeah, I'm so proud, but also so grateful for I've been able to do it. Just do it, because all these other players were as good and probably had prepared as much as I did. But it wasn't their day, and it was mine. So yeah, it was incredible.
I will say, getting to be there the moment you did qualify for Worlds and getting to see you right afterwards. First of all, kudos to Zenulus for keeping it down when you won that game, because Olena was napping right next to me, and I told Zenulus that if he woke Olena up, I would kill him. And so he had to not scream when you won your match. But you were so just resolute in that moment, and you really could tell that you had accomplished what you came for. And then when I saw you later, and you had lost, I think, the next match, you were still just so proud of your accomplishment in making it to Worlds. And I thought that was so admirable, that you were just, you had achieved what you came for, and you were proud of that accomplishment. I think so many people get in their heads, if they don't, make it, to top 4 to the finals, but you weren't like that at all. And I just think that was a really kind of beautiful moment that day. And I was so excited that I got to be there to celebrate with you, like right after you won. That was so wonderful.
Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, I could have seen the glass half empty, right, and said, "Oh, I again missed a Mickey for the second time," right? Like winning a golden Mickey for the second time. But no, specifically not like when playing against Ed, who is in my testing group, by the way. And if there was someone that I could not be ashamed losing to him, it would be Ed, and only Ed. Because first, I think he's the best player in the world, and second, he had built the deck to beat mine, like 100%. Like he knew it was the best deck in the format, and his genius deck building prowess just like he gave himself all the tools, right, with his genius, and said, "Okay, I'm just gonna beat on the best deck." and try to win the rest. I don't know how he did it, to be honest, but he did. And on day 2, on Sunday, he was there to get the reward, right, out of his all the artwork that he did on day 1, right, playing through not what he had envisioned, right? Like he had envisioned playing at least against 3 red blue, and he only had played against 1, right? And 3, like 2 green steel, and then like the ember steel as well. And so going through all these he made himself so hard, much harder than it should have been, right? By playing this very dedicated anti Ruby Sapphire deck, right? And then he was just reaping the rewards when we when he got paired against me. It was his time to shine, right? Like it was like, okay, let's reap there, and I was all there to let him do it. And and I was just very grateful that it was not in top 16, right? Unfortunately, it had happened to my teammate Ryan, and that was very dream crushing, right?
Yeah.
Obviously his matchup was much closer, so like he had, like Ryan had a really good shot at just like taking him down in that top 16 match. But yeah, once he won against Ryan, I was like, okay, well, Ryan is like Ed is there he has blood in his eyes, right? Like he's a shark and we're just sitting there just like getting picked apart.
Yeah. What a bold call. I mean, as you know, Trey, highlighting the chat here, no genies, crazy call. Yeah. I mean, it takes a lot of confidence to make, because when you're the best player, and I know I do want to take a look at your deck list in a second, talk about that. But when you're think you're one of the best players, I do feel like there's an incentive to bring the same deck as everybody else, because you're going to play it better. Right? So like bring the meta deck and just crush everybody with the deck that is good. And it takes guts, I think, to say, you know what, I'm a great player. I could beat everybody with the standard deck, but I think I know what the right call is here. And I'm going to go this way. I'm going to zag when everybody else is zigging. I admire it.
Yeah, and what's the story that I was telling, and is that Ed, I think that speaks to Ed's like boldness, but also I think the fact that he was already qualified for Worlds might have helped. Like
that's fair.
Being more confident into bringing something that might not work, but if it does, it probably does it the whole way through and then wins it all, right?
Yeah.
And and most of us didn't have this confidence because there was Worlds on the line, right?
Yeah.
That's what all matters, right? And so I did the exact opposite. In fact, like I was contemplating bringing some really spicy red-blue lists that were working, but sometimes I would brick on those really spicy lists, or my spies wouldn't line up with exactly what like I could face. And I was like, do I want to take that risk, or should I just bring a very consistent deck and be the best red-blue players in the field? And so that's exactly what you just said, right? I did the exact opposite. I'm going to bring the most basic, very well-rounded, a lot of inkables Ruby Sapphire deck, and just be better than my opponents. And it worked for me, right?
Yeah. Brendan, do you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to continue that train of thought, because I remember having a conversation with you, S4iler, in Seattle when we were like going to the venue together, and we were talking about Worlds, qualifications, and we were having this conversation on sort of how interesting it would be to see who brings what deck, right? Because you have a lot of players that are known for a specific deck. And I even remember you telling me like you weren't 100% sure that you were wanting to bring Ruby Sapphire. And I thought that was such an interesting thing, just because it's a deck you've worked on for forever. It's like you mentioned, you've written tons of guides for it and things like that. So I personally was very invested in knowing just what you were bringing in general and what other people were bringing. So I just wanted to hear more thoughts on sort of your thoughts on why you brought what you brought, and deciding on Ruby Sapphire. But I feel like you just mentioned a lot of that there.
Yeah, I have some other thoughts to it. So at some point, I wanted to. Okay, so one of the first deck that I tried to build at early set 6 as Red Sea was an Amethyst Ember deck that was way more aggro, but was very, very much trying to be as best as possible on the draw, playing like the new 2-drop meta mim that gives +1 challenge, and playing all 4 crabs, trying to be a little bit more on the control side. And I was winning on the play, but not really winning on the draw with that deck. And then I did the LCCC, right, with Ruby Sapphire, because that I knew people wanted me to showcase the deck, right, and be the one that brings the novelty to the new meta, right, and that was Shark and Pirate's Life, right, and so I kept working on that for sure and trying to refine that list as best as possible, and it just became more apparent that it was the best deck in the format. When we started realizing that Emerald Amethyst couldn't even 2-0 us reliably, I was like, well, these decks are winning on the play versus us, and sometimes we do win on the play, on the draw, but we win on the play like almost every time. It means that these pseudo aggro oriented decks are not even beating what are supposed to be their best matchup. So so I knew that Ruby Sapphire was in a really great spot because of it, and the addition last set with Tipo means that like the small Lilos and the small Maleficents, right, from the first chapter, were not very valuable. It wasn't. They're just being outclassed by this little kid way too soon, right? It's because we used to only be able to ramp or do something, but now we can ramp and deal with these little critters, right? And so, in order to build an aggressive deck, in order to beat the Ruby Sapphire deck, you needed to be leaning so much into that you were giving away too much to the Steel meta, right? Because Steel was just so prevalent. And so I knew that Ruby Sapphire was the best deck in the format. And the last thing that I could have done that I almost I thought I could maybe do it, but I didn't do it in the end, is bring a deck that punishes people mulliganing for aggressive curve against what they think I should be playing, which is Ruby Sapphire. And so I thought about bringing Emerald Steel with which was Aaron's Lorcana Bros lists, and that we worked on, right? And eventually he brought it and he shared it with Zan as well. But I decided that I was very not like the advantage of doing wrong mulligans would only last a round or two, basically, because starting around 2 or 3, everybody in the room would know that, oh, by the way, Sailor is not on Ruby Sapphire. Everybody would know it.
Did you hear? Did you hear?
Yeah, exactly. And so I thought that this advantage of misleading my opponents into wrong mulligans would only last for so long. And it wasn't enough of an advantage, as opposed to playing a deck that first I thought that was the best deck, but also that I was extremely comfortable with. So I thought about it, but in the end, everything worked way too well for me to just part ways when the deck was at its best, basically.
Yeah. I know.
No, I had texted Liam. I have to run to do some more work to get ready for my event. But Sailor, it was so lovely to see you. And congratulations again. I can't wait to hopefully see you in Florida. So
yeah, absolutely.
Brandon, I'll see you later.
Yeah. No, that's all great stuff. We had for anybody who watching this on video, we not listening to it, we do have your deck list up. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty standard. Looking at it now, and I know Nationals or Continentals North American Championship is only a week and a little bit ago, but if let's talk about Set Championship real quick, because a lot of people are watching because they are either playing in Set Championships next weekend or later in the month, and a lot of people either play this deck or considering playing this deck. Are there any changes you would make to it now that you've gone through Continentals, or is this a pretty solid list and you're stuck on it? And what advice would you give to people who are thinking about taking this into their local meta, which, you know, sometimes they're a little bit different than what we see in bigger tournaments?
Yeah, for sure. So this specific list was made in the idea of the 2-game format, and in also in the context that very few people had qualified with aggro strategies, right? I think that most of them had got their invites through steel decks and Ruby Amethyst, right? And so I needed a deck to be as consistent as possible, and I was so there was this one aggressive decks that was going like mostly 1-for-1 when I was testing, and that's like the Dicandios deck, which was the Digi Digi Old, right, with the mines and the dock and stuff like that. And I would always win on the play, and on the draw I would lose only if they had like Daisy turn 1 into multiple other daisies or piglets. And in 2-game format, you can just take your loss. You're like, okay, if they have it, they have it. I'm gonna lose on the draw, and I'm gonna win on the play and go to the next, right? And I didn't want to have my deck get worse against the field, just to try to not lose to these very powerful lines, right? And that's kind of like a thing that the 2-game format lets you do, right? And of course, the best of 3 would not let you do, because you'll have to play one more match against that. Against those decks, right? So the main thing about this list basically is that it's missing the Sisu Daring Visitor, because it was not great versus Amethyst Steel and Ruby Amethyst, and I thought those 2 decks would be quite prevalent, and also they are a bit bricky on the play sometimes. They're really like an on the draw type of card, but of course they're uninkable, right? So I thought just remove them and go max number on Tala, on Tamatoa, on Maleficent, to be as consistent as possible and to have the best end game possible against the mirror, right? Because when you say Ruby Sapphire is the best deck in the format, of course it comes with also a lot of mirror match, right? And I thought I didn't want to bring too much tech cards, because the other thing is that the tech cards are in an open deck list are not as great. So that's the other thing that I wanted to check. Like I had some checkbox, right? I want exactly 1 Hideaway minimum and 1 Lucky Dime, because on open deck list on Sunday, I want to not give too much to my opponents, right? They need to still respect the Lucky Dime and respect the Hideaway, right? Because if they don't, I give them too much value. And I knew going forward that all I was thinking was about that first Sunday match, right? Because it was the most important match of my year. I needed to have a deck that is not trying to do cheesy things, and then suddenly when it's an open deck list, it falls off, right? Because we had seen that in Europe. Reese brought like a very spicy Ruby Sapphire list with the Sisu, the inkable 3-drop Sisu, and the Flynn, right? And it worked in the Swiss, and then it was very not. It didn't work once it was in open deck list. It got his mulligan all wacky, and it really didn't work. So I wanted to have something consistent and nothing of all the other like tech cards. And I think for the set championships, it's actually the opposite. You kind of, there's these lists that are out in the world, and people are gonna have these in mind when they're gonna play against you. And if you just like have a Vitalisphere in play, and suddenly you play like a 6-drop Mulan and challenge and wipe their whole board, you're like, oh, I didn't expect that. And then you get a free win out of that, right?
Yeah.
And so those are the type of cards that I'm like trying to, secretly push to people. Like, put these type of cards in your deck in Set Championship, because people won't see it coming, and you'll get free wins out of it, right? As opposed to me, I needed to be a little bit more like consistent, and the best of the best of North America won't fall for these type of trap cards, right? And so that's how I built it, and that's what I think people should try to maybe change for their set championship. So, like, of course, like small Sisu in a best of 3 format is going to be much better, and also I think like the small Mulan, the big Mulan, even like a random Scar, can really throw people off. And Ed is asking, how do you feel about the lack of human Sisu, versus aggro? I think it's human Sisu is one of the most oppressive cards for the aggro players. And since the introduction of Ursula's return, I had so many people come up to me like, can you please remove human Sisu from your list so that people can stop running that card? Because when it does its thing, it's very, very brutal. Like, because it's a brawl that sticks on the board and quests, and that threatens a -2 ink on the big Sisu, right? Like, it ramps, it kills, it banishes, and it quests. Like, what else do you want, right? But I thought for the weekend, it was not the right card for it. So I would not suggest people just picking up the list unless they just want to see how it feels, because it felt like butter. Like, it was so smooth. The deck was just running so smooth, right? And when you play these higher number of uninkables with the Sisu Daring Visitor, it's a little bit harder to mulligan, and it's a little bit harder to play with those cards that are sometimes a little bit cumbersome in your hand, right?
Yeah. Interesting. Shout out to Ed Chu there, winner in the chat. Thanks for hanging out with us. Several World qualifiers here. Lord Giverson asks if you have time for one more question from the chat. What matches your greatest fear with this list? I mean, if I'd answer for you, I would say it's Ed Chu, his list.
100%.
What are your thoughts?
100%. Like, I faced 2 Emerald Amethysts, and people would think that would be the one. And I went 3-1 against them, and the one loss that I did is actually a funny story. I was on the play because I had won the one on the draw, and then I have a big Sisu, a shark, and something else I can't remember, and they have a Beast Relentless and a 1/3 Ursula, right, the Deceiver. And they have a rabbit. And they are on 8 lore. I'm on 10. And I just visioned of the future for my Maleficent Monsters Dragon in order to deal with the Beast Relentless. And I didn't quest with anything, just to make sure that they cannot Beast Relentless shenanigans, right? And they were on 6 ink going to 7. And so they play Elsa, tap my big Sisu, my Sisu empowered sibling, get into it with the rabbit. They quest with the Beast Relentless, all like in between all of that. I'm just gonna. They get to 10, and then they challenge with the rabbit, draw a card, and their face just like goes full on bright, and I'm like, oh no. Ink and plays Mystical Rose, and then gives +2 lore to the beast, and then gets in with the 1/3 Ursula to deal the 3rd damage on my Sisu, untaps the beast, quest for 4, going to 14, right? And then what did he did? He did the rabbit. So yeah, the rabbit was the 2 was 4. So 2 plus 4, 14, and then the Ursula going to 18, and then finish off the Sisu with the Elsa to 22. It was just like the mystical rose off the top when I had full board control next turn, right? Like, and so that was my my only loss to Amethyst Emerald. And that was a really nice one, to be honest, like going from 8 to 22 in the same turn with exact same ink, and also the exact correct correctors, because if this Ursula would have been any 2 power corrector, it would have taken out the Ursula in 2 my Sisu in 2 it and not 3, and so you would have missed 2 lore from winning, and then that would not have worked, right? And I would have Maleficent whatever was left and quest out and probably win in a turn or 2. So it was just like a very incredible game, and I had lots of those stories throughout my tournaments. Like 3rd round, winning the first game, not being able to finish the second was like very, very, very hard. And then 4th round, I face Amethyst Emerald again, and I win the first, and the second comes to this such a close margin. It was incredible. I quest out with my characters. I had planned out my turn like 2 turns before, of just I'm gonna play this really like greedy line, because I know he won't challenge into my characters because he's gonna lose too much out of it. So I'm gonna play so that I can go from something to 11 and 11 to 20, right? And so played like Big Sisu and Maleficence, and I could have like took a different line with Hiram's and trying to control the board, but I went for a very aggressive line, like trying to win really quick before he can find a win. And then he draws his card. He has only a rabbit, and then he inks his Elsa. And I'm like, whoa, something's wrong. And his old bunny language goes full on, I'm winning this turn. And I'm like, and so real quick, while this is happening, I look at his paper where his lore count is, and it's written 18. And I look at mine, it's written 16. So I just like fully stop him. I'm like, stop. What is going on? And he said, well, I'm like, what's your lore? He says 18. I'm like, okay, I have you on 16. We're going to call a judge and see what's up. And so it takes a whole 15 minutes, 3 judges.
Oh, man.
We reconstruct the whole game from turn 1. Wow. And it's quite easy because I have a good memory for like what happened. And also like a whole discard tells the story, right?
Right.
And so it's quite easy but it's not really easy because like we're in the heat of the things, and it's very important because this is my 4th round. If I go 1-1 again, it's gonna be like 6-0 or I don't go, or I don't get there. And then we reconstruct everything, and I was in fact right, and he was not. And basically he went from like 1, 4, 8, 13. And on his paper, it was from 8 to 15, but probably like his 3 was looking like a 5. And so on the following turn, he quests for 2, and instead of going from 13 to 15, he goes from 15 to 17, right? And so that was the mistake, and it was a totally honest mistake. My opponent was a very, very, very good and very fun and very nice opponent. And he said, "I'm really sorry." And he plays goat, quest with rabbit, go to 19, and I say draw. Quest out, win, and like out
my
gosh,
gosh,
the smallest margin. I even drew the Pirates live, so I would have won anyway. But like if he had the win there, I would have lost, right, and go 1-1, and probably it was over for the tournament. And then I went 2-0, and then 1-1 against Patrick, who got top 4. And then on my last round, I went 2-0 against Emerald Steel, against one of my students, who had played Ruby Sapphire for the last few months, and when he saw me like walking to the place, he was like,
"Oh no,
oh no, I could not have chosen a worst opponent on round 6 for a win." And I unfortunately had to to crush some dreams and go 2-0.
Yeah.
And that basically ended my Emerald Steel run for the season 8-0. Never lost to Emerald Steel. Emerald Steel got me my invite, and it got me for Continentals, and it got me my invite for Worlds.
That's funny. And amazing. And it's kind of a perfect segue. We are at time. I'll ask if you have any closing comments in a second, but I did want to mention for everybody watching, before we send you off, you mentioned, student, S4iler mentioned this up front too, but for anybody who's looking for coaching, particularly on Ruby Sapphire, but really any Lorcana in general, S4iler is obviously one of the top players in the game, going to Worlds. You definitely look S4iler for coaching, and then also his Ruby Sapphire guide is incredible. Brandon, I know you study it as I do before every single casting gig.
I was going to say, I can't recommend the guide enough, because that's exactly what I do. Before we cast for every event, for a couple events now, I've messaged S4iler if I don't already have access to the guide. I'm like, hey, do you mind sending this to me? And I'll read it on the plane ride over, and for, a week or two prior to the event. And it goes super in depth into like all of the matchups that you would ever want, mulligan lines, etc. If you want to play Ruby Sapphire and you want to like build a better understanding of the deck just in general, I cannot recommend the guide anymore.
Thank you.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me.
It's always a pleasure. You're welcome anytime. Before we go, any closing thoughts before we say goodbye?
Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you for everybody that came to the event, and just like the fist bump, the shaking hands, and just like the congratulations. You cannot understand how unbelievable it is for us to just witness all the support and all the smiles and the love, and it means so much, and it makes this whole experience as like something out of this world. Basically, it's just incredible, and I'm so grateful for all the people that are nice to us, and thank you so much.
Kindness goes around and comes around. So, I mean, you all deserve all of the platitudes and everything. So, thanks so much for joining us, S4iler. Have a great night. We'll see you next time. All right. Oh man, I could talk to S4iler all night. I don't know about you.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's an awesome dude. A lot of those lab guys are.
Yeah. It always, it's always amazing to me, when you get to meet some of these players that you look up to, that you follow in line, you follow their tournaments, and we've had the privilege of meeting a lot of them throughout the challenges. But every time, like, I've never met one of these top players and left thinking anything but that was the nicest person. I can't believe they gave me the time of day. And,
that's what I was about to say. Just to kind of reiterate what S4iler said there at the end, I can speak for us as like casters, which is a totally different like type of person at these events, right? Like I always appreciate when somebody comes up and says hi. It's always a fun experience. But even like us in our positions, where I feel like people maybe assume that, we maybe have similar privileges, or like it's a little bit easier for us to like walk up to these players because it's like kind of our job to like know them and like have some level of understanding for the game. It's still really intimidating sometimes to walk up to these like world-class players, but not once have I walked up to any of them and started a conversation, or even just messaging them like looking for help before a DLC or something. None of them have ever turned me down. They've always been super happy to talk to me. And like you mentioned, give me time of day. I can't speak for other card games on how normal that is, but it is just something that I love to highlight about the Lorcana community, because everybody's just so nice, and especially S4iler. Like I remember I was with Aaron. We were across the venue, like across the viewing area. I was just kind of standing watching the match that I think you were casting with Tannen at the moment. And she goes, "Oh, there's S4iler across the way. I wonder if he won his top 8 match." And then she was like, "He looks too happy to have lost." So I'm like, "Oh, that's great." So I end up having to go to the bathroom or something. I come back and I catch S4iler over there because I hadn't seen him all weekend. I wanted to talk to him. And I was like, hey, did you win your top 8? Because it looked like he did. And he was like, no, I lost in top 8. But he was so like, still happy to have qualified and was so cheerful. And then we, had a chat about the weekend and how the rest of their team was doing. And all of this to say, if you see any of these, people out at an event, like don't be afraid to say hi to them. They're some of the coolest people out there, and they're usually super nice. I haven't had a bad experience so far.
Yeah. No, I haven't either. It's been such a pleasure. Well, with that, it's time for the part of the show where we look back at the week a little bit and talk about what we learned since last week's stream, what's going on in the Lorcana community. If you're watching and have any questions for us, like put them in the chat. We'll try to address them, give you our thoughts. Brandon, I feel like as I look back on this week, I kind of feel like there was this nationals or North American Championship hangover for a few days. This kind of euphoria we were getting through. Then there was a lot of reflection, some discussions, and we didn't have much news. I guess before we talk about some of the other discussions that are going on, I think the one piece of news that we did have was this Inklands.
Oh
thing.
yeah, the Inklands gift set, similar to the first chapter one, right? That we saw.
Yeah. Yeah. So for those not, following the news, there's these, they're very similar to the first chapter gift set. They popped up, but the difference is this one comes with a promo card. You can see it there on the left. It's this cool red border, sparkly foil Mickey Mouse pirate captain. And I think they're exclusive to Costco.
I think so as well. I know I haven't seen any anywhere else. And is it like, what's the other one that there's a Lilo one, like a Lilo promo that comes in something like this? I don't know what set it's for though. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. I forget. I think it, Caroline's saying behind the scenes, I think it's a next set product, like maybe the gift set product line for the next
I just know it looked similar to this promo, except it has like it's a different art. It's an alt art, but it still has the like amber border instead of the ruby border here for the Mickey.
Yeah. I wonder, it's interesting. I suspect, this is one of two things. I don't suspect that there's another Inklands reprint. There may have been, but there's so much Inklands around.
So
perhaps this is just a way to.
There's so much Inklands. I was kind of surprised to see, like, it almost makes me think they had so much Inklands. They're like, what can we do with the rest of this instead of just like continue to send it out to stores? Because when I was at the parks, and I don't know if this is indicative of anything, to be honest with you, but when I was at the parks, the only 2 sets that I could find of anything in the parks was Azurite Sea and Inklands. And then like everywhere else that I go, like at my local Walmart, the 2 sets that I can find are Azurite Sea and Inklands. Like for some reason, Inklands, and I guess like maybe it makes a little bit of sense because I think that was the set which Ravensburger like really picked up the printing because they were trying to catch up to the shortage that they had for the first chapter in Rise of Floodborn. Like maybe they just printed way more than they needed to, sort of in anticipation for that. But it's always interesting that Inklands is like the thing that has stuck around and won't seem to go away.
Yep. I think that's probably it. The only other thing that makes sense is because we had the same kind of box set exclusive to Target. Now we have one for Costco. Perhaps different retailers are getting different exclusives and they just, are going through different sets. So perhaps we'll see like a Floodborn gift set pop up exclusive to Walmart here in the near future, like unannounced or something like that. But it does seem to be a way to test the waters with like retailer exclusive product lines. So Inklands is a weird choice if it was a reprint, just because there's so much, but
it's so much. And like I'm taking a quick look of like what's in Inklands, and it's a pretty good set. Like there's a lot of very staple cards, like cards that we saw at NA Champs, take NA Champs. Like it's a good set to open, especially I think for players that are still needing to kind of build their collection. So it's not necessarily like a bad set to like be doing this with, because if you don't have those cards, it's a great thing for people to go to the store and open. There's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah. You want to hear something crazy, Inklands? Shrinabug's followers, $4 uncommon.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get a Shrinabug's followers in the uncommon slot, and you've pretty much paid for the pack.
That's true. Smee is sitting at like $2 as well as an uncommon.
Yeah. Robin Hood, Kita,
Mhm.
Deceiver of All. Yeah, no, there's good stuff. And then of course foils. I mean, even a foil Deceiver is probably
Yeah.
a few bucks.
I don't know what the foil is, but yeah, a lot of staple cards and a lot of staple colors for that set. It was a very good. It was. I remember it being like well, actually, yeah. Like thinking about it, Atlanta, right? The first DLC was the only Into the Inklands DLC, and that's probably like the most open um challenge that we've ever had. Like people showed up with all kinds of stuff because I feel like there were so many cards that entered the format, because Rise of the Floodborn is basically just like Ruby Amethyst galore.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of things that kind of helped against that matchup specifically and kind of burst everything wide open. So if you're missing Inklands cards and you live near a Costco,
There you go.
there you go. I guess if you want the promo card as well.
Yeah, and go ahead and if you do buy it and you bust everything open, grab those 5 puppies from the starter deck. You can send them down to me.
Yeah,
POE, a little bit of postage, no problem.
Puppies are like almost 50 cents a card.
I know. The thing about them is, not everybody wants them, but people who want them want 99 of them. So
yeah, you want enough of them to make the deck.
Yeah. So anyway, I do think those will trend upwards over time as people get into more casual formats and stuff. But anyway, what else from this week do you want to talk about? There's plenty we could.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I'm missing before I get into what I would consider kind of like the big topic of this weekend.
Yeah.
Or of this week. Because I don't really want to like gloss over anything once we do start talking about this. And I'm struggling to think of anything. So if there's something, maybe we should check our notes. Did we put anything in the notes?
No, I put Set Champ stuff in the notes.
Yeah, like I guess there's that, right? Like Set Champs is happening. But I kind of already went over my personal Set Champs experience. Across the board, I'm personally like on the socials, which again may not be indicative of like the wider meta, especially in North America or Europe or vice versa. I'm seeing so much steal. Like I feel like almost every post that I see of somebody saying they did well is like a Harlan Sweetie blue steel list or like an amethyst steel or amber steel list. And I know there's been a couple like ruby amethysts that I've seen floating around there. Oh, that's a good one, Steven. The Japan release is this weekend, which I'm very, very excited about. I have a booster box coming. I ordered it at like 1 a.m. on New Year's Day. So I was like, this would be fun. I've never opened Japanese cards, so super excited about that, and just kind of crossing my fingers that it actually shows up, because I'm not sure how reliable the website was that I bought it from.
Yeah. I think we're all in that same boat. The entire North American Lorcana community is like hoping that they pick the right.
Yeah. I also have no idea how long it's going to take to ship. So like, even though I know this weekend it releases in Japan, like who knows? I might get the booster box in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
But regardless, I'll be looking forward to it. I know almost nothing about it because I know the packs and the boxes are different. Like it's not like our booster boxes where there's 24 packs and 12 cards a pack. I don't know what it is. I think it's like 16 packs and maybe 6 cards in a pack.
Yeah, something like that.
Something around there. So I'm just going to open it. I might record a video of it or just do like a quick live stream when it comes in and open it up with everybody. Cause I don't know. I think it'd be super fun to have some Japanese cards like thrown into my deck. And it'd be super sick to open a first chapter Japanese enchanted card.
Oh, I know. I did see a picture of an enchanted Elsa in Japanese, and I was like, that's sick.
I was talking to some friends this week because I'm still trying to like finish my I'm calling it a master set. I guess it is because I have a play set of everything else for the first chapter, but I'm trying to finish my master set of the first chapter. I have a foil of every card. I'm just missing the enchanteds, and Elsa is one of those enchanteds because she's been more expensive than everything else. And I'm like, if I am lucky enough to open an enchanted Japanese Elsa, does that count? Do I just throw that in the binder that is like every other card is English, or do I need to does that not count? I just need to get the English Elsa. And my brain is like, my OCD brain is being like, that doesn't count. You're not going to get out of having to pay for the Elsa.
Well, you get the Japanese one. I bet you could find pretty close to a straight up trade.
Maybe. Yeah, that's the thing. I'd have to trade it though. Like
Yeah,
Japanese
that's
also
true.
would be pretty cool.
That's
Although it
true.
is one of those cards like, are you ever gonna play First Chapter Enchanted? Are you well, I'll play First Chapter Enchanted. Are you ever gonna play First Chapter Elsa? You know?
No,
So maybe it
no.
is worth that trade.
They're I've seen it done, but not recommended from my camp. Too beautiful card. Yeah, so that's something. Yeah, we'll all be opening Japanese Lorcana here in 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks.
Mhm.
Pretty excited for that.
Soon. TM.
Yeah, I think I may do a video as well. It depends on when it comes in.
Mhm.
Because there's a point where they're all out there, and then you're like, meh, all right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So should we talk about the, I don't know, the elephant in the room?
Yeah, I'm not afraid to start this conversation.
Yeah.
Shout out to Rebecca Quest for sort of sparking this. If you haven't seen her post on X or on Twitter, I highly recommend you go and watch it because I think she basically worded what the majority of the Lorcana community is sort of feeling, like in the most elegant and concise and like best way possible. And a lot of other people seem to have shared those feelings. It has like, I think last I checked, like over 38,000 views or something for the tweet. There's a lot of people that have interacted with it, replied. I quote tweeted it and shared a lot of my thoughts. And it's basically just sort of a reflection of the first year of Lorcana and, you know, how great it's been, but also sort of some constructive criticism, complaints we kind of have as a community, things that we feel like, I don't know how to put this lightly, should be different is the best way that I can come up with right now.
Sure.
Or that we expect more from. We talked about how there's not a lot of news this week, and that's kind of part of it.
Yeah.
We left North American Championships. I think a lot of people going into North American Championships, especially not seeing any announcement at EU Championships, like knowing when Worlds was going to be, or having some sort of idea of what the next season for Disney Lorcana competitive events were going to look like, maybe when they started, or you know, if they were going to be the same, if there was going to be any change, maybe how many DLCs there were, like any information at all. Because although we still have Worlds to look forward to, this is essentially the end of the first season of competitive play and competitive events for the Lorcana fan base. And a lot of people will watch Worlds, but nobody's going to get to participate in Worlds as far as we know, except for the people who have been invited, which is a very small handful of people. And we walked out of NA Champs with a picture of Lady from Lady and the Tramp. And that's going to be that's going to be a new franchise in Arcasia's Island. And that was the announcement coming out of the weekend. We know nothing about Worlds. I think it's like 26 players are qualified for Worlds. None of them know when Worlds is going to be. We just know it's supposed to be in Disney World. And it's a little bit concerning because a while back, I think at E23 when it was announced, Ravensburger didn't say this, but a lot of websites that have been reliable in the past reported that Worlds would be in March. We're obviously getting very close to March. And it's probably not happening in March based on what we know and understand. And so not knowing when it's happening, I'm sure is making a lot of the players who are qualified a little nervous, because there's obviously a lot of planning that you have to do to, you know, reserve paid time off or time off work. Also prices for airfare and accommodations, things like that obviously get a little bit more expensive or are harder to find the closer to a date you have to travel. And I think in general, the community is kind of left like with big question marks on like, what do we have to look forward to for the next couple months? Because players are itching to play this game, like at the end of the day. And since players don't have anything more than a set champs right now to play for, I think it's leaving a lot of players feeling like there's not much to do, maybe. And this is really only one of the things that were highlighted in a very long list of things for Rebecca's post. But that's one of the things that like really stuck out to me after NA Champs, which is kind of why I'm bringing it up now.
Yeah. We could actually, one thing I will say right up front, is for anybody, people should go read the tweet, look at the issues that were brought up. We're not going to do it justice here because there's so many things that we could talk about. Each one of the issues that Rebecca brings up could be a 30-minute conversation on its own. So we're going to talk, I think, kind of broad strokes about the big issue, I think, which is just communication. Who knows, Brandon? Maybe if we get enough demand, we'll do like a surprise follow-on stream later in the week or something where we really dive in. But no, I think two things, maybe three things. One is just broadly, communication is so important. I think sometimes in TCGs, whether you're somebody who works on the game or whether you're a player or a commentator or a content creator, we forget that everybody is experiencing the game not the same as us. We each have our own focuses. Some people are just set championship players and they're content to go set championship and engage in the current meta. Some people love theory crafting. Like that's literally what they want to do. And so when they see spoilers for the next set, they're immediately diving in and trying to figure out the next set, and they want to have the new hotness the second it hits the ground. Some people are competitive players who are going to world championships, who are looking forward to the next challenge, and their life is preparing for the next challenge, forecasting when it is, following the meta, trying to figure out planning, saving. And the problem is right now, as you highlighted, we're just not getting much of anything to give a broad sections of the community who want to experience the game in their own way, things to work with, the tools they need to enjoy the game. And I will say, what Rebecca and you said is true as well. Like full credit to the team for pulling together challenges. We had a great first year. The challenges, H1 got better. There's a scenario where we had no challenges last year, and that didn't happen. We had some great competitive events. So this is all coming from a place of, acknowledging that we were lucky, that people put in a lot of hard work, and we just want it to get, a little bit better. Equilibrium is another thing I wanted to talk about. TCGs come in cycles. They come in series and waves. A set comes out every few months, and we get used to these patterns. Every few months, we have a set championship. Every few months, we get a Lorecast. Every few months, we get spoilers starting at these times. And we have gotten very used to a pattern the last 3 sets, and everybody's gotten very used to this cycle. We've kind of, that cycle is interrupted here. And we're now at the point where in previous set rotations, we would be seeing cards from the new set. We'd be getting a feel for the new set and kind of understanding the trajectory of the game. It's perfectly fine if the company wants to change it. Like I'm not sitting here demanding that we get, Lurkhouse every time. What I am saying is if we're going to change things up, people notice change, and change can be concerning and scary and off-putting, especially when you're heavily emotionally and financially invested in a product like Lorcana. So if we're going to change, the tempo or the pattern, I do think it's a good idea for the company to tell us that that's what they're doing. So, we can adjust. But right now we just don't know what to expect. I have other thoughts, but I'm running long, Brendan. I'll pause.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly agree with you there, and like I'm gonna go ahead and say like I can't demand anything as a player, as a consumer of this game that I have no part in making. But there's a lot of things in this game that, as you mentioned, the community has grown to be used to, but not only be used to, like really appreciate and enjoy, like the lore casts, like the story trailers, those things that have come and go. Like when the first Lorecast ever happened, there were handfuls of us that like jumped together on live streams just so we could watch it, and then of course it was like a super awesome surprise that you like were there at the first Lorecast, and then the Lorecast after that, a lot of people did the same thing, and it's kind of become this routine of like, it's almost this like celebration, start, exciting like thing to hype us up for the new set. It teaches us a lot about where the new set is going. Like I mentioned, gets us really hyped for it. And it's just another form for Ravensburger to communicate the future to us. It's not, we've seen like Ryan sit down in front of a camera and address a particular issue. One that sticks out to me is like the lack of product, right? In the first and second chapter. Like he sat down and said, hey, we hear you and we see that like this is an issue in the community, and here's what we're doing to fix that. Here's what we're doing to work on that. So I don't even think the community is like necessarily expecting, you know, as much as it would be nice to have like solid information for some of the stuff that we're missing. I think even something as simple as sitting down and being like, hey, we hear that you guys, would like to hear from us more. So we're going to sit down and tell you that like we're working on it. We can't really tell you more than that, but we're working on it. Maybe here's a card or two for the next set, you know. I think the community is kind of starved for anything right now. And one other thing that I want to highlight that I do think is important, and we could talk about this all night. Unfortunately, we don't have all of that time. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of different ways that people like to engage in this game. You have your competitive players, you have your social players, you have your collectors. And now more than ever, from my point of view, it feels like most of those groups are like, I don't really know how to say this. They're just like, they're missing stuff. They don't feel as maybe Ravensburger, it feels like Ravensburger isn't as connected with like the community as a whole, because like something that I'm super interested in learning more about are these quests, Lorcana quests that we heard about at D23. I think they were supposed to be tied to Worlds. So obviously like not having much Worlds information, like maybe that's why we haven't heard much about the quests, but I thought that was a super cool thing because it was different than the challenges. You had the Disney Lorcana challenges and Disney Lorcana quests, and it was sort of these two things. One of these is for, you know, the players that they know really love to engage in this game in a competitive way. The quests were for the people who like to engage in a bit more social atmosphere, but still sort of like an event these people can go out to in a celebration. And like I think it's so important in this event to sort of recognize and give space to like both of those groups, because honestly, like since the beginning of this game, that's been a conversation in this community, is sort of competitive versus casual or social, and sort of which one is leading or which one is, you know, catered to most, and sort of how each group can sort of coexist with each other at the same time. So I think it's super important that like both people are both groups of players have things to look forward to, feel seen, feel heard by Ravensburger. And I just feel like in general, like everybody just kind of feels like there's just silence. We're just kind of sitting here and we don't know what to expect. We don't even know if any of this stuff is happening anymore.
Yeah. No, I agree. And and again, I could dive into any of those specific topics, but I think I'll echo what you said, and that is with the preface that the game came a long way over the first few years. I think, you know, they had to scale rapidly. I think the game was probably a lot more successful than anybody anticipated. And I'm sure that there are growing pains. So I completely understand. Full credit team for everything, growing pains. But I want to echo what you said, and that is, I don't think the community is necessarily even demanding or asking for, you know, all of the answers now. Mm-hmm. But they would like to know two things. One is that the company hears or understands some of the concerns. You know, we could talk about where is Quest. We could talk about Worlds dates. We could talk about, you know, when are spoilers coming. We could talk about Judge program. We could talk about all these things. They want to know that people have a pulse on things. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is, I think people would like to know when they can expect answers. And I think even if you said, hey, look, you know, we're Worlds, you know, we know we're cognizant that players are going to travel to Worlds and that they're going to have to block off dates and say no to commitments, and that it's causing a lot of anxiety right now. We are finalizing scheduling. We can expect it about this time or no earlier than this time of the year. Mm-hmm. And we expect to provide you news on or about this date. Like even that would be enough. You know, news, I think would be welcome.
Yeah, it used to be a meme in our community, right? Like an announcement of an announcement, but like we'll take anything at this point. If there's anything that years of therapy has taught me, it is that like people like to be heard. Like they like to know that they've been heard. And I think more than anything right now, that's the important bit. Is I feel like right now we're just getting crickets from Ravensburger, and which is why I want to highlight this sort of before we move on to another segment. Like, we as a community have a voice. Use your voice. If you are frustrated with Ravensburger, it's okay to be frustrated as Ravensburger. Something that Rebecca points out, that Liam's pointed out, and I'm going to highlight again. All of this, every ounce of it, 100% of it comes from a place of love. Like, because we love this game so much, we see the potential, we want it to succeed. I know it can be the #1 trading card game in the world one day, right? It just like, it reaches so many people and it has such an awesome community. We want it to succeed, and we don't want people leaving this game. We want people flocking to this game. And when we see stuff like this, where we already see other players contemplating, looking at other games or playing other games while we're kind of in this lull, we obviously don't like that. So if you're frustrated, like I'm frustrated, say something about it, because hopefully if there's enough people out there and if we're loud enough to voice our complaints in a constructive way, right? I don't think it helps to just like bash Ravensburger in any way, but constructively voicing your frustrations, I would hope and I would think can do a lot and might help Ravensburger understand what we as a community need and what we as a community want. And then hopefully they can, adapt to that and respond to that.
Yeah. My last thought real quick, just to put a bow on it before we bring in our next guest is, completely agree with you. And I know we agree on this too. The one thing I would ask the community, and I think everybody's pretty good about this, is understanding that on the other side, on the Ravensburger side, there's nobody up there who wants to hurt anybody or hurt the game or whatever.
Yeah.
If we aren't getting answers, there are reasons for it. They may not be, we don't know what they are, but they're working through some stuff, I'm sure, and we're going to get. It's why it's important to do it in a respectful way. Like, these are people who care about this game as much, if not more, than we are. What we're doing is helping them understand what we need, so that they can find a way to alleviate those concerns. But no, this is great. All right. We got Zane in the chat here, demanding that we get our next guest in, because frankly, he's awesome. So really excited for this. First time on the show. Not first time, talking to him in depth in person though. We're going to bring in Mo Shamblin here in a second. Mo is a player who I met in Las Vegas, got his qualification there, came in the top 8. At his first DLC, went on a whim for his anniversary, and left his daughter in the care of a relative for the first time since she was born. Thought they were going to go play in some side events and maybe spend some time in Vegas having fun. And then next thing you know, he qualifies for Continentals. A player that I absolutely love, and not only is he a wonderful person, but he always brings in some really awesome decks and builds. So I'm really excited to talk to him. All right, so Mo, I'm about to bring you in. I always have to let the guests know like when they're coming in, because so yeah, Mo, welcome to the stream.
What's up?
Hi, how you doing?
Good, great.
We're doing great.
Awesome. Even better now that you're here. Now that I said all those things, why don't you, since your first time on the show, we're going to look at your deck list. We're going to talk to you for a bit. Do you want to introduce yourself and your TCG background to the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Mo. Hi, Mo. Hi, good to see you. Everyone's sleeping away. So I have been a competitive TCG player on and off, but for the most part on since 2008. A lot of time spent in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG and a little dabbling in Pokemon and Magic each, but mostly Yu-Gi-Oh! And then when Lorcana came out, I was forcing my fiance Mandy to play Yu-Gi-Oh! With me, and it wasn't the most fun game to get into as a beginner compared to someone who's been doing this for 13, 14 years. Lorcana came out at a great time, and we both just loved to play it against each other, and it was born.
Yeah. So one question I have for you before we take a look at your deck list. I have to know how you prepare for these events, because one thing that always impresses me when I go to challenges is I see the players with teams come in. I know when Labyrinth comes in, they have a robust testing group and they're playing games and they're jamming games and they're talking whatever. You're not on a team, and yet you come in with, I would consider them, slightly off meta decks, if not off meta decks, that end up being the right call that you pilot, perfectly. And it's not every day that you have people who are, not part of a big team come in with these unique builds and then succeed persistently. So what goes into prepping for these tournaments for you?
Well, not part of a big team yet. We've got some
Okay.
stuff brewing, but
Okay.
realistically, so for Vegas, my preparation was for the most part in-house. We had the conversation previously when we met in Vegas, actually, about my history in the game not being super thorough. But I had great testing partners at home. I played against my fiance Mandy, who I'd get all the red blue practice on in the world, and my brother was a devout Ruby Amethyst player for just years and years. So we just play a lot, and it worked out real well in Vegas. But our preparation for nationals was a little bit more extreme-ish, as extreme as a dad can get. About 1 day a week I would devote to practice and do what I can. But I have to shout out a lot of y'all in the chat. My friend Zach, we would work every week. He was also a competitor. My friend Cody, the Grays, Zane and James, Devin, just the whole local scene. Daniel, everyone knows Daniel, so he's over there in the chat. But everyone was just helping me prepare, really get a good grasp on the meta, and just really helping me build my confidence for this event. Bringing Emerald Amethyst into a steel-focused meta against the best players in the world, you got to have some confidence to make that decision.
Yeah, I agree. Brandon, you had a chance to commentate one of his games, didn't you? I'm trying to remember.
I don't remember. I'm being 100% honest with you.
Okay. I had because I had your match against Zan, I think, Mo. That was fun. I can't remember who had your first stream match, but for those unfamiliar, this is what Mo brought in to the tournament. Emerald Amethyst bold list. It is one that didn't perform or had not been performing very well at a bunch of different tournaments, had kind of fallen out of favor despite being thought of as one of the best decks early in the set. But you did some different things with it and kind of had a different philosophy than I think some people did, and had some interesting tech cards. So how'd you land on this build? Why did you land on this build? And yeah, let's just go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. About midways through the format, somewhere around right before the European Continentals, we started to discover how powerful going wide was into the current format. It was too risky for all the steel decks to really be on grab your swords, because red-blue is likely the best deck, even though it wasn't performing well at the time. And being able to just say, if I'm playing against a red deck, they can only eliminate one thing at a time until we get to the 7 turn. So when we look at it through a lens like that, I need to find 1-drops that are not only powerful in their own right, but that scale well into the later sources of the game. Hence the variety of draw 1-drops. A draw 1-drop is a high scaling card in my opinion, because it's very strong in the early game, especially if you landed against something like red blue or a deck that does not play 18 1-drops and can miss their 1-drops. You can squeak out more lore as you go, but into the later stages of the game you can translate them into another card. And if you're mulliganing for multiple 1-drops, you typically are going to draw something better than a 1-drop at that point in the game. Go-Go was just one of the craziest cards I've ever read on release, so I was full sold on making a Go-Go build work. I realized, a lot of people were tinkering around with dropping bounce, but I couldn't drop any of the bounce cards early on. It's just too impactful for what you can do. Playing Emerald Amethyst as a a deck that plays two hands. You play your hand in your hand, but you also have your field as a secondary hand where you can just reutilize these powerful on play effects.
Adding that to the commentator notes.
Yeah. Some of the odd choices besides all the one drops, Sir Hiss. Shout out to my friend Cody. He got 23rd at Continentals. We both traveled up there. Three of us from Northwest Arkansas were competing, and we were testing the night before the event. Just the night before the event, I was struggling into red blue, oddly enough. Like S4iler was saying, it's not a great matchup for Emerald Amethyst. I was having a hard time breaking 50% win rate into that deck, and it was always play draw. And so I'm like, I don't want to have a draw against a deck that I think is going to show out. So I was back and forth between a couple cards. Bonsai is the obvious one, but he had his struggles into steel. The library was another big card, and we saw that one really show out this weekend, but I just didn't think this was the deck for it. So he tells me to play Sir Hiss. We play about 5 matches, so about 15 individual games. I don't draw Sir Hiss once, and I'm like, Cody, what do I do? He's like, just throw him in. It'll do the job. And it was an outstanding card, just being able to throw 3 damage counters on something for go-go. It has applications against Steel Song in a way that it demands a song, or it's going to slowly advance the game state without giving Rapunzel value, which was really nice. If anyone watched my featured match, it had some really cool spots against Maui Shark. But yeah, it's a cool card. Rourke is a card we've experienced in the past. A lot of people dropped him off early on, but I think he was pretty key to beat songs, or to consistently have a decent matchup into songs. Prince Philip is a fun card. It's so funny. This is NA Continentals, the best 128 players on the continent, and I had people ask to read Prince Philip at least 4 times. I'm like, he's got one word on him. But you play him, he quests for 2, you bounce him and replay him. It's a strong in-game scenario against Maui Sharks. It's got its, applications against Steel, obviously, because he's very hard to get off the board. Really just demands a be prepared without grab your swords being in the meta. And then everything else is pretty standard until you get to my little pony. The Pegasus shift line, I decided on here. So I was running the small Pegasus and was really liking it into Calhoun, into Ruby Amethyst, and even just against Steel in general, because a 1-drop, if you play a 1-drop outside of turn 1, anytime they're using a song on it, I don't mind. So as long, I decided I was playing the small Pegasus for sure. And the big Pegasus, I just kind of threw in on a, not a whim, but a thoughtful notion that if I ever open up the shift line with my 1-drops, it would give me a powerful, unexpected edge against this level of competition. But yeah. Any particular questions on it?
I just have to give props to you, because knowing that North America players usually really like Steel, and also knowing that Ruby Sapphire was supposed to be a pretty good deck, but not even one that in the Azurite C meta that you were heavily favored in. I think this is just an extremely great example for deck builders across Lorcana to see the innovation that you can kind of do on a deck, because it feels very much like this is just a deck that you like to play, right? There were other decks that you could have chosen, but you wanted to play Emerald Amethyst, and you knew that these things were going to be problems, right? You knew songs were going to be a problem. You knew that there were other matchups that might cause you issues, but rather than conceding with the typical version of that deck and changing to something else, you experimented and you brought different stuff. You pulled back Sir Hiss, you pulled back Prince Philip, you brought the Pegasus shift line. And I think that kind of stuff, can sort of be thrown to the wayside a little bit, especially by some players where they're a little bit scared to test weird and different things. We even heard S4iler mention earlier, especially for Set Champ season, try weird stuff, try unexpected stuff. I think it's just sort of a testament to your skill as a player and as a deck builder to be able to show up with something like this in what a lot of people would say is an unfavored widespread meta, and then to do so well with it.
Thank you. It definitely was really gratifying after I started winning some games after a rocky start. But
it was fun to watch. I did get to commentate some of your games, and just a couple moments that I remember. One is seeing Prince Philip period and having to explain to people what that card was. I think I got a tip from you early on what your list was, so I was a little prepared. The next, I got to see Sir Hiss into Maui, Shark into a go-go, to, I think, close you out a game, or at least get you to win you a game. You got 4 lore off of it with that Sir Hiss, which was pretty amazing. So it's a really fun build. And then the go wide strategy, the 1-on-1, 2-on-2, really, really fun to watch you kind of pilot that. I do have, since we're talking set champs, I do have your, so you played in a set championship this weekend.
Yeah.
And you changed it up a bit. So I wanted to, for anybody watching who's thinking about piloting Emerald Amethyst, which is, don't get scared. It's a fantastic deck. If you practice with it, if you learn it, it's a lot of fun. It's the best deck in Lorcana. But if you're thinking about going in, definitely take a look at Mo's list. This is one that you can do very well with, or you can change it up, make some changes, because there's plenty of different alternatives out there. So what did you hear?
Yeah. So here was a little variation on my Continentals deck list, just a couple slight changes. I knew locally that Steel would be very popular, and I also was wanting to run some tests to see the strength of the Ursula shift. Hopefully I was able to snipe a green steel matchup so I can really get some practice into that. But I was just looking for answers that lie in the colors to any kind of struggles. But yeah, this got me my first scar of the season. I went 4-0. I matched against 2 Songs players, 1 Ruby Amethyst and 1 Lemon Lime discard to get there. And made it to top 8, and then lost to the Songs player that I beat in round 2. Shout out Zane in the chat. He's a 14-year-old that beats all of us Nationals competitors like every day. He's crazy.
When are we having Zane on the show? That sounds like
yeah. But I wanted, so knowing there'd be more steel, so there's 3 changes here. I dropped a Rose down because not super impactful against steel. There's very few situations I need that 1 extra lore. I added another Rourke, and I dropped the 2 larger Pegasus shifts because everyone knows what I'm going to be playing and can kind of expect it, which makes it a little bit less powerful. And I wanted to test out that Ursula shift to try some theory crafting against not only Songs, but especially Green Steel. It's a very powerful card if you can establish it, and it existing in the deck list makes Ursula such a threat. And if they are focused on, brawling an Ursula, it lets my genies play free. It lets my Merfolk get a couple extra quests out. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So you felt, how did this feel? Pretty good?
Yeah, it felt great, honestly. I had a pretty wide variety. I got the matchup I want to see, which is Ruby Amethyst. It was, one of the more favored matchups of this deck, but it held up strong against 2 very strong Steel Song playing opponents, and I only shifted Ursula once on them, so they can't complain.
Yeah.
I ended up losing in top 8. So I mulliganed 5. As you may notice, there's still 18 1-drops in this deck. I mulligan 5, and I miss a 1-drop on 1 and lose home field.
No.
And I'm like, well, there goes
at
my
that
first
point.
seed.
At that point, you just know it's destined. You just weren't supposed to win that one.
Yeah, it wasn't for me. I still took him to game 3, but it was a tough one.
Yeah. So I do have some video questions here for you to talk about your performance before we move on to another topic. I do have to say though, a huge shout out to Mandy, one of our favorite people, for the sticker in the chat. We don't get those very often, but it means a lot because it just means a lot. So thank you for that. Really appreciate that. I have a feeling that that sticker came about at this point in the show, not for Brandon or I, but we'll just say that. So I do have some video questions here, if you don't mind, Mo.
Hello, it is Katie from the Lurch Prison. And my question for Mo is, last night I was building your deck, and some of the card numbers were a little whimsical as far as how many were of each. So my question is, how did you land on how many of each card to put in for the final version of your deck?
So, absolutely. I definitely have some odd numbers for sure. I kind of, in my head, I have a big, almost Venn diagram of matchups I want to cover with particular cards, and a balancing, especially of the 3-drops, between proactive and reactive 3-drops. So Cloud Kicker is one of the best cards in Emerald, and running less than 4 is a difficult decision to be made, but it was one that I had to make to have a better red-blue matchup, for example. Prince Philip, I upped because I really needed that pressure. I talk about Rourke and White Rose in the Set Champs deck that I knew I was going to be playing against more steel, and I don't really need that instant lore. Like, I still want some in the deck. I still want the option. It's a 3/3 body, but I wanted to see more Rourkes. And generally, if I play a card, a 2 of is a power card I'm looking for in a certain matchup. I don't typically play 1 ofs. It's just hard for me to reason, and I don't mind going above 60 cards. A 2 of is a very powerful card that I'll look for in mulligan lines sometimes. A 3 of is a card I really want to see at least once a match, and a 4 of's absolutely integral to my game plan or to make a particular matchup work. So just somewhere along the lines of reasoning with that logic. Some stuff's more simple, like Genie versus Rabbits. I would take as many Genies in my hand as I could possibly have, but I never wanted more than 1 Rabbit in my hand because I just want to play it and bounce it. And yeah, hopefully that answered it pretty well.
I think it did. Yeah, it's interesting. Card numbers are always funny. I also, like Katie, enjoy looking at people's lists, and sometimes I have questions about like very specific numbers. The one article that really changed my thinking on a lot of this is Frank Carson's article on Steel Song. And I'm sure you've read it, Mo, like, or at least Frank Carson's stuff. 3 is his number as well for cards. He's like, if I want to see 1 card a game, I put 3 in my deck, and I guarantee that, more likely to see just once, and that's it. The other thing that Frank said was the cost curve is huge for him. Like, he will put cards he wants in, but the curve is so important to him that sometimes you'll see a 1 of on like 2 or 3, and it might not be a card that he wants as much as a 4th copy of another card in a different cost, but his curve is so important that he will smooth it out with like a 1 of card in a particular ink or a particular ink cost, which is, I always found fascinating.
I love it that you bring that up, because the thinking behind the math leading up to this was, in a lot of matchups, I never wanted to play 1 card per turn. I always wanted to try to angle the math to do, say, I do the 1/1 drop, the 2 1-drops on 2, but on 3, there's a lot of matchups that I'd want to go a 2-drop and a 1-drop on 3. Or if I play a 3 on 4, I want to play a 3-drop and a 1-drop. And there was some numbers, the Sir Hisses especially, I was really back and forth between them and Bonsai more than Library, even though Library evens out that math on its own. But having the 2-drop, because your 4 and 5 ink turns are very powerful, because typically, unless blue is ramping very quickly against you, they are your last turns to really expend pressure before the game starts becoming in your opponent's favor. Once you get past 7 ink on their side, that's Be Prepared, that's Sisu. There are so many just particular removal options they have that in your 4 and 5 ink turns in green-purple, you really need to look for ways to just put powerful things on the board and just enjoy your last turns before you lose your entire board,
Yeah. I don't know. I always look at Emerald Amethyst. I always talk about it as a 2-phase game, kind of like you just said. Phase 1, you're jamming out as much lore as you can. Phase 2 starts against a control deck when they can gain control of the board. Sometimes it's 6, but usually it's 7. When a lot of those big options become available, and you can expect at any moment they're going to get control of the board. And then your strategy shifts. It's scratching. It's trying to get a character to stick for a turn. Those ward characters ideally, or whatever. And then the goats and the roses and things that you can, eke out that last little bit, or a well-timed go-go.
That's my favorite.
Yeah.
I do remember being in the viewing area watching one of your matches and seeing like a go-go played on a Maui for that 4 damage. I'm just like, those are my favorite plays in Lorcana, where you just kind of like either catch up super quickly or sort of end the game right there. I love go-go for that.
Very powerful card.
Go-go. What I love about, so I'm going to get some more of this, but I like playing aggro decks. I like the feeling of it to a degree. What I don't like about playing aggro decks is when you, like Diggy Diggy Hole, for example, is a perfect example of the aggro deck that I don't like playing in competitive tournaments, because there comes a point where you just can't win. Like, it is literally impossible. And one of the things that I love about, Amethyst, like everybody else, and then go-go now, is it gives you reach. It gives you a way where you never feel like you are quite out of the game, because even if you're like 4 or 5 lore away, that given enough turns, you can get that, even if you can't get characters to stick on the board, even if your opponent has like 8 be prepareds in their hand. So yeah, go-go gives you just that little bit extra. Instead of having to get like a goat bounce combo to get 2 lore in a turn, you can possibly swing 4 or 5, even in the right scenario, 6 lore or 7 lore into a Tamatoa in a turn, and close out a game that otherwise, seems unwinnable. I don't know. I love it.
Go-go and, just the instant lore burst is what gives us the advantage over other aggro decks in this scenario. And it just makes your opponent, it puts a high skill cap onto the Emerald Amethyst matchup that a lot of opponents aren't necessarily ready for. If they quest their Hiram against a lone fox on field just to get those extra 2 cards, the fox threatens not only putting 4 damage into the Hiram, but you play the go-go and you can bounce it and just use it to just instant lure them out of the game. It's a fantastic card.
Yeah. Cody, I think your test buddy says that you always have the go-go. So I've one more video question, if you don't mind, from our good friends.
Hey Mo, Aladdin's Castle here. Just want to say congratulations on your performance at Continentals. It was really cool to see a green-purple player make it all the way there, so congrats. My question was basically, how did you prepare yourself against all these steel matchups, knowing that it was pretty rough against especially like Amber Steel aggro, or Diggy Dig, or stuff like Amethyst Steel? What was your strategies kind of going into the matchups? Like, what were you trying to look to do for like your play lines and kind of just the overall steel color?
So that's been a big question to me over the past 2 weeks, really, is like, how do you manage that? I played against 2-3 steel matchups in Continentals. I played against it last night. It is a different matchup than anything else you play, because this isn't, we play a very aggressive deck, but it's also, we have Amethyst bodies. We have the resilience of Amethyst, and in a lot of scenarios against songs, we are playing a control matchup. There's no point in the game we can try to just aggro them out and hope for the best. Realistically, it's just never something that can happen. Their singers can just wipe our board so much faster than we can quest out, and then suddenly they have a 9 lore swing on the turn. So I do what I can to slow the game down. Even against traditional songs, we scale very well into them. So I'll still attempt to go wide, but I'll look for big crab, bounce crab with fox turns, just really start taking those, removing the singers out of the game. And I personally still am a huge Lyle Tiberius Rourke fan, and so I don't mind if they push upwards of 15, 16, 17 lore, because I can play Rourke and start to just chip away at them. And if I have more cards in hand and a Rourke on board, usually the game's just over at that point. and I can start questing with my genies, with my evasives on the side to set up like a 2-turn push into game. So my best advice is take the game slower, try your best to slow them down, and the longer the games go on, the better. Oh, and just draw Ursula Deceiver. You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Just draw Ursula Deceiver.
I love the Lyle Tiberius Work edition because like something that I thought was super interesting was, you know, that was a card that we saw played in Ruby and sorry, not Ruby Amethyst, Emerald Amethyst, in previous sets, and then like in this set more than any other set, Pirate's Life has like come in and, you know, done crazy stuff with Maui Half Shark because of its ability to sort of like help that aggro matchup of like forcing your opponent to lose lore. And although you're not always a control deck in, as Amethyst Emerald, I just thought it was interesting that like people were so heavily favoring the Pirate's Life thing to like get your opponent, especially those Amethyst decks, right? Because the Amethyst decks were kind of going crazy this set. Like get them off of that dangerous range where they're 3 or 4 lore from winning, and then like everybody cut Lyle out of the Emerald decks. That does like a kind of the same thing where it can force your opponent to lose some lore. But Mo, I did have a question for you. You went over the Steel Song matchups, but I imagine, you know, everybody's set champs meta is going to be a little bit different. And although we can't predict everybody's, you know, what's the most popular thing at their stores, I do think we can pretty safely say that like Ruby Amethyst, Ruby Sapphire, and Steel Song are probably some of the more popular decks, meta decks people are bringing. So you've gone over some of the Steel Song stuff. What would you suggest, either like general strategies or just like cards you might consider adding or cutting from the list if you were expecting a lot of either Ruby Sapphire or Ruby Amethyst going into something like a set champs if you wanted to play this deck?
Yeah, so against Ruby Amethyst, this particular build is very geared towards, so it's actually looking great because Ruby Amethyst is such a popular deck in set champs because of its consistency and best of 3 power that I think that alone makes Emerald Amethyst a tempting choice despite being in a very songs heavy meta. But it's just the ability to go wide just pressures them. I think looking into more evasive stuff like the Pegasus package is fantastic against Ruby Amethyst. And then against Ruby Sapphire. So I will say I'm not a doubter of Ruby Sapphire and set champs. There are certainly people who make it work. And as S4iler was talking about, you look for plays like the Mulan shift play that's just insane. Like, oh, well, that can happen. Sort of ideas. So you definitely can't sleep on red-blue. But I just would never want to be the red-blue player that gets matched up against the 8-year-old running hyper aggro. So I would, but to be able to be prepared for both of them, I would say just know their turns, know their power turns, know what they can do with their ink. The deck list itself is very strong into them, but it doesn't mean it's free, especially when you start staring down a Maui Shark on the board and you're just waiting for them to draw a power card like a dime to just squeeze you out of the game. But yeah, if no one sees it coming, definitely run the Pegasus shift line. It'll make someone. It'll be great.
I feel like the secret's out. Now that you took it into North American Championship, but maybe it's still there. No, that's great. I love this list, Mo. For anybody watching, we're going to put a link in the show notes to the top decks from the North American Championship. So you'll be able to find both S4iler's red-blue list and Mo's purple-green list there. And then you should also, and I'll say this near the end too, but you should also follow Mo. People should follow you, Mo, because I know you're getting into content creation. You're putting your information out there. If you want to get better at the game, if you want to get better at Amethyst, Emerald, or I'll tell this story in a second, or any other deck, Mo is another player to follow because the information is there. And I did want to mention, you told me you have a mission this set champ season, though, just for everybody watching, and you're going to try to bring a different deck into every set champs. Is that what you said?
So my goal, because Amethyst is so powerful, and it's pretty fair to say that Amethyst is one of the most powerful colors in Lorcana currently, if not the most powerful. So my goal this set champs is to win a scar on every amethyst color combination. So I get to break out the ruby amethyst soon, the purple steel, which is a deck I'm a big fan of. And then hyper aggro and blurple are my other two, which I'm not as strong playing, but I'm sure I can figure it out. I got a good teacher for blurple at least.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, on that note, Brendan, you have any other questions, or should we move to our final bit?
I think I'm good.
All right, and ambush Mo here. Before we sign off, we have one final segment to get to. For those who watched the show before, you know that we usually end with a game. So we're going to do that again this time. We're going to bring in our quizmaster here. I'm going to see if I can cue up this video, and we're going to play a little Disney trivia. Sometimes I remember to keep the video, sometimes I don't.
Hello.
Hey. So for those who don't know, Carolina is our resident trivia master here at the Limiteers. And I hear you have some fun questions for us this week.
I do. Yeah. I took a little dive into Mo's deck and came up with some questions based on the cards in there. So Mo, are you a Disney guy, or are you more of a TCG guy, or are you like squarely in the middle?
So, real quick, Lorcana has kind of been my tie between both. I grew up with Disney, kind of slipped away as an adult, and my fiance Mandy is a huge Disney fan, and the card games just kind of got me back into it and feeling like a kid again. So,
Love that.
If Mandy wants to join you and tag team this trivia, more than welcome.
She's welcome to, yeah.
Mandy, come in here. I need you.
But with this trivia, and we'll help you too. And with this trivia, if you get all 5 questions right, or at least close to right, you will earn the coveted one of 150 Limiteers trivia pin, which I will send to you. So there's 500 golden Mickeys. There's only 150 pins. So there you go.
They're pretty exclusive.
Yeah.
And you do luckily have a team here you're working with, so you're not competing against Liam and Brandon. They're collaborating with you.
That is true. That is true.
You also have chat as your lifeline. It's not illegal to use chat. It is illegal to use Google, however. So.
Okay. I got these guys. We'll be fine.
Yep.
All right. So we're gonna start with. Is that Mandy joining you?
Yeah,
Mandy.
Amazing.
Hi,
Hello.
Mandy.
All right. What does Zeus make baby Pegasus out of?
Clouds.
Yeah, I knew that one.
Good. Awesome. Like to start you off easy.
That's my boy. I got to
I could ask you to be more specific because he does say like the kinds of clouds, but I won't make you.
Cumulonimbus.
That is at least one of them. Good job.
Oh, sorry.
Faye's also here.
Faye. Hi, Faye.
Aww.
Oh.
All right.
Daddy game.
Daddy game.
To play.
All right. Question number 2. Which film is The White Rose from?
The White Rose. It's Alice in Wonderland, isn't it?
It is Alice in Wonderland.
Okay,
Very good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Crushing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 for 2 so far. All right. Question number 3. How many different magic broom cards are there in Lorcana?
Okay, so there's the one I play. There's the steel that kills Diablo. There's the one that gains in Rush. Not Rush. There's the one that gains power and location. There's the one that no one plays that's like a 6 cost. Oh, this one's so hard.
Yeah.
There's a vanilla one. Did we mention that one? There's like a
Vanilla.
2/4.
There's the set one that Ruby Amethyst played where they would shuffle cards back in their deck.
Started at glory. Yeah.
I'm at 6. I'm seeing 6, 7, and 8 in the chat. Oh gosh, what are we?
The 8 has a question mark, so I don't know how confident.
Nobody's confident about this one yet.
Where's my brother? If my brother was here, he plays brooms now. He moved from Ruby Amethyst to brooms. River, please.
Not
Mandy
enough.
says
That's the correct answer, Kim. It's not enough.
Not enough. Okay, I thought you meant 7. What are we thinking? Liam and Brandon?
Oh man, you hit all the ones that I could think of. My rule of thumb is always on questions like this, get to the ones I can remember and then add one because there's one I clearly can't. So if I had to guess, I would say so.
I will say, Daniel has asked a good question. I don't count the ones pictured in other cards. It is just cards named Magic Broom.
Okay, so we don't count Lose the Way with the dog broom then.
No, and we don't count like Playful Sorcerer or Sorcerer's Tower or Yensid.
Zane's telling me 9. Zane. All right, Zane. All right. I'm trusting you here, Zane.
Zane is right. It is 9.
It is 9.
Woo!
Wow. Way off. I can't even think of
more than I would have thought.
Riley's also right. There are 3 in steel. The rest are all in amethyst.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Several people in the chat got that right. Shout out to Your Story Devin, Zane like 5 times, just stomping his feet,
screaming at you to say 9.
Had
to. Crazy.
All right. Moving into a little bit harder questions now, back in the Disney category. What other Disney character has Olaf's voice actor played? So this requires you to know 2 things. Who voices Olaf?
Josh Gad.
Yes, Josh Gad. And who else has he played? I'll give you a hint. It's live action. It's not animation.
I ran across the house. I know it.
Please.
Go ahead, Mo.
It's LeFou from Beauty and the Beast.
Oh.
I was thinking.
I literally ran in from my office. I heard it from across the house. I was like, no.
Thank you. One more.
Way to go, Will.
Good job, Aaron. we love an Aaron fly-in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
And the last one, in The Sword and the Stone, how does Merlin defeat Mim in their wizard's duel?
I know this one.
I think I know this one too.
It's like a wizard's flu.
Wizard's flu. Okay.
I'm right. It's the virus.
Yeah. Because she gets the spots. It's the flu, right? The wizard's flu. Like, is that what it's? We don't know what it's called.
I mean, it's not called that, but close enough.
Yeah.
He turns into a germ and he makes her sick. Yeah, very good.
Good job.
I said no disappearing. Not disappeared. I'm small. A germ. And you.
Oh no. I'm waiting for a Merlin germ card. Honestly,
when are we getting that one?
I need it. Yeah. I need it in my life.
Yeah, and the art should just be like nothing. Like it should be
just like a little speck on the card.
Dot.
I'm expecting it to actually be sick Mim, but the card is called Merlin. Sure.
That'd be I can see that.
Good. That would be good.
Yeah.
Well done. You got all 5.
Woo!
Thank you for all the help.
That was 5 out of 5. Shout out to Mandy and Aaron for the assists and Zane for that.
The clutch 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Katie, I have Merlin germ from Continentals. I think
a
lot of people do.
Yeah. Merlin made his rounds.
We were the week before we started getting ready. We were all just sick, and we're like, we're gonna have to cancel. And we all got better probably about 4 or 5 days before time to go. And so we were rushing to get packed, but I was scared.
Yeah. Sorry, the chat is cracking me up right now.
Yeah, the chat is providing the entertainment right now.
Yeah, Osmosis Jones is not a Disney movie.
Osmosis Jones is not a Disney movie. That's a great film, though. Honestly,
it's a film. I'm a sucker for any live action animation combo, so yeah, we'll call that. All right. Well, congrats, Mo. Thanks. We ambushed you with trivia tonight, but I knew you'd be a good sport.
Ready for it.
Yeah, came through with flying colors. So, with that, Caroline, thanks so much for that. Always a fun way to end the show. Yeah. Mo, any closing thoughts for you, and how can people follow you before we wrap things up?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to shout out sometimes just take a chance on the deck you're comfortable with. S4iler talked about this too, but sometimes it's just the right choice, even though it's not considered the absolute best. You might be able to surprise people, try things that aren't super standard. But you can find me on the socials as that Mo Kid. That's also how I'm on YouTube, and I'm on Metafy now, and it's been a good time. I've had a lot of love on there lately, and I appreciate every one of you that's on that. And I appreciate all of you anyways. But
that's awesome. Send me a link to your Metafy, and we'll make sure to get that in the show notes as well. Brandon, thanks for your inaugural show here as the co-host.
Congrats on your promotion, buddy.
Oh no!
It only took how many appearances?
I think this is like 11, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I was my strategy, if Brandon didn't agree to come on right away, is just to like invite him for one-offs.
Just keep asking every. I told Liam a long time ago, I was like, any night that I'm available and you need somebody, I'll tell you yes. So I kind of like hooked myself in already with that promise.
That's true. That's true. You said it, and yeah, I can't take it back. Brandon, any closing thoughts? There's so much we talked about this week. Yeah, kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to reiterate what Mo said, we saw 2 worlds qualified players today basically tell us, they bet on themselves with the deck that they knew and that they loved, and it worked out for them. And so especially as the set champs is upon us, we're sort of getting into the grind of it. If there's a deck that if you're considering switching something, maybe take a minute to consider something else, or consider what you've been playing and maybe make some fun little tweaks to it. I love the ingenuity that we see, especially around set champs. I think it's a great time to do it. Just to reiterate some of the stuff we talked about earlier, use your voice. We want this community and this game to be as best as it can be. So if there's something that you're frustrated about or something that you want to see in the game, be sure to voice it. And the same thing goes for things that you enjoy seeing. It's also just as important to say, hey, I really loved the viewing area at NA Champs. It was awesome. I want to see more of that again. So continue to do that. And other than that, I'm looking forward to seeing you every week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting with you every week. This is great. The time honestly flew by. So yeah. With that, I'll say I'm excited for next week. I hope you all watching come back next week. We're here every Monday at 8:00. If you want to come on the show and play trivia, if there are guests that you want to see, if you want to send in video questions or normal questions for us or any of our guests, connect with us throughout the week. Jump in our Discord server. Send us notes, follow us on socials, and yeah, because we'd love to connect with you. And join us next Monday where we'll talk the latest news goings on and maybe some spicy set champs builds. So